ever before.
We are not going back.
Welcome to Sidebar from the Washington Post. I'm Libby Casey, and I'm here this week with senior political correspondent Rhonda Colvin, columnist James Hohmann, and senior video journalist Jorge Ribas, who just got back from Springfield, Ohio, where, spoiler alert, Republicans' claims about people eating pets are still not true, and they are still causing chaos.
Yes, still not true.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah,
great to see you. Welcome back to town. On today's show, we'll talk to Jorge about what he saw in Ohio, and then we'll step back to talk more broadly about the state of the election with less than 50 days to go until November 5th. We have the first polls coming out after last week's presidential debate between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris. And in the key battleground state of Pennsylvania, it's essentially a tie. In just 12 days, CBS News will host the Veep debate in New York City between Senator J.D. Vance and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, which I think will be really fascinating. So much to see about how the two of them mix it up together. A reminder that you can listen to our podcast on your favorite podcast app or watch with us on YouTube. Just look for The Washington Post. Let's get started with the small city at the center of the national eye in the last week, Springfield. So, Jorge.
Yeah.
When I called and said, I want to go to Springfield, Ohio, what did you think?
I mean, I knew it was coming eventually. And it's sort of like, there's a lot of like similarity. I had sort of flashbacks to covering Trump's when he was president, which is something would happen or he would say something and we would have to run off and cover this, In this situation, this was obviously his running mate Vance, but it felt very similar to that. Like, when he mentioned something, we have to go cover it. So I knew it was coming. I knew someone was going to tap me and say, hey, what are you up to?
So a reminder to everyone, the story starts off when J.D. Vance basically makes a claim that constituents are letting him know that people in the Haitian immigrant community in Springfield, Ohio are, he heard, taking people's pets and eating them.
Right.
This is not true. Donald Trump amplifies this on the debate stage last week when he says, in answer to a question, he pivots to immigration and starts talking about people eating cats, eating dogs, eating pets.
Well, he yelled it, basically. Like, he was in that debate, he said it. I think that clip was, they're eating the dogs.
And it's been like put to music. It's been memeified. Yeah. It's like echo. It's reverberating a full week plus later. So the story's not true.
Right. So, I mean, in the days and weeks after this, those stories have been, I mean, even at the beginning, I think there was a photo of a man carrying 2 geese or a Canada goose that wasn't in Springfield or it wasn't near there. And then I think the Ohio Department of Transportation said that this images came, they don't even know where it came from. This man may or may not have been a Haitian immigrant, that the goose may have been struck by a car. They don't even know the verified of that. The cat story was found that was false. The woman who first reported it found her cat in her basement. I mean, this was not, and she apologized, as said profusely. So all of these social media rumors, I mean, this shows like anyone can post anything on social media, right? And you say something and then it gets picked up. And this time it was amplified by the Republican vice presidential candidate and then amplified even more so by Donald Trump. And so, yeah, I mean, none of this has been verified. I mean, they've talked to the mayor, the city manager. There's no reports of this. And it just kind of blew up and really was harmful that I saw to the people that we talked to there.
And the reason why we sent you there was not to investigate pets, to be clear. We sent you there to see what the fallout is, because since Springfield became the center of this national focus, schools have gotten bomb threats, hospitals have gotten bomb threats, City Hall has gotten bomb threats. Schools have had to be evacuated, shut down. Yeah. The governor ordered state troopers to be there to help protect people. Once again, not to look for pets, but to help protect people who were freaked out because their kids were getting pulled out of school for bomb threats. So what did you actually find in Springfield?
Yeah, I mean, I found like the aftermath of this chaos, really. I mean, and it wasn't, there wasn't like militarized zones and there actually wasn't even as many. I was expecting to get there with like 5,000 of my closest reporter friends descending on this town. But it wasn't that bad. I mean, I did see reporters here and there that I talked to. But I mean, it wasn't, I went to a couple of the elementary schools and they did have police cars, state troopers stationed out front. I talked to one of the troopers And he said it had been calm. This was the day, I think, after the schools had been evacuated for the bomb threats. But I talked to a reverend, and she mentioned to me that, like, the chaos that this causes, right? So it's not just that there's a bomb scare at a school. That's frightening to the children. But, like, the kids have to be sent home. That means the people whose parents dropped off the kids have to take the day off work, come pick up their child. I mean, this causes just like this reverberations of chaos. People have to leave their jobs, go pick up their kids. And that's what I saw, was that, like, to that kind of atmosphere. I went to a Creole restaurant called Rose Goûter Creole restaurant right on kind of the main drag through Springfield. And when I walked in, the first night I walked in, there was these two greeters in front that were really there just to, like, meet anyone coming in. I think there was some security, but it was mostly just like to talk to people. I talked to them, and the restaurant was actually filled.
Were the greeters Haitian?
They were Haitian.
And were they there to, like, welcome you or check you out or ask you why you were there?
A little bit of both. Okay. I think they were there kind of just to, like, make sure everything was okay.
Like, no one was there to cause trouble.
Yes, okay. Right. Mm-hmm. But what I saw there was, there was just like a ton of people there eating, a lot of non-Haitians also eating there. And they told me, it gets crowded there, but it was more crowded. There had been some support. People were coming out to, like, support. I talked to one set of diners that were just there. They like eating there anyway, but they wanted to come there more just to show some support to the community. But really what I saw was just kind of like the aftermath of just like all of this national rhetoric. And it's a small city. I mean, it's 50,000, 60,000 people. And I mean, I can't imagine what it must feel like to have, like, the glare of the national spotlight just suddenly shine on you.
And Jorge Ribas come to your town with his microphone.
Parachuting in.
Right. Yeah, that's what you feel like. I mean, that's the truth of it, is as a national reporter, like, you are, like, diving into, like, a town and then, like, trying to figure out the nuances of this issue in, 59 seconds or less.
Well, one reason why we do send you is because you are very experienced and good at just talking to people and getting their stories. Like, you go into a story without the preconceptions of it's not written before you go. You are very good at, like, and very experienced at just telling us what you see, telling us how it feels on the ground. So give us a sense of what people talk to you about in terms of the Haitian community there, and how are they feeling? I know it's a huge community, it's a diverse community, but what do they tell you about what the ramifications of these lies and rumors about them have been?
Yeah, so I talked to one, and we could show a clip. I talked to one gentleman named Patrick Joseph. Let's listen to what he had to say about the situation there.
That hurt us. A lot of people really scared about the situation. And people, just for them to go to work, they are just stay home, and then when they have the right to go, they went outside to go to work. They're scared to go for shopping. They don't want to go outside at all. For example, last Sunday, we have our church is empty. We don't see none of them coming because they're scared to coming outside.
So he's saying that the comments by Vance and Trump hurt them, and people are scared to just go about their normal lives.
Yeah, I mean, and I talked to him, and he'd been in the U.S. for a few years, so he was able to speak to me. I had some language barriers. Speaking to some of the newer immigrants or people that just hadn't learned English. But yeah, I mean, him and I've talked to several other people who were just kind of, you could see that they were scared. They were scared for their community. They were scared for, like, all of these rumors and accusations, what they would get threats by. They were just kind of scared to go out, go to church. But one of the things that I did talk to another gentleman at the restaurant, I interviewed Patrick over at a community center that works with some immigrants who are getting, some of the paperwork they need to get jobs and stuff. But I talked to this other gentleman at the restaurant who said while he understood some of the fears and some of the frustrations of the Springfield residents, the non-Haitian Springfield residents, he also was heartened by, like, how he'd seen people come to the restaurant and eat and show some support for the city. And I should know that the city's, like, it has gone through some of this before. About a year ago, there was a really horrible, tragic accident where a Haitian driver crashed into a school bus. And in that accident, a young boy died. And that, I had a lot of people tell me that kind of created a very tense situation in the city. but that they'd managed to kind of come out on the other side of this. And part of the reason they were able to come out on the other side is the parents of this boy had shown a lot of grace, really, in not wanting their child's death to be used to blame migrants. That same child had been used by the Republicans recently to advance kind of this anti-immigrant behavior. But yeah.
The story of Haitians coming to Springfield is a real story, and there has been a big influx of Haitians to that community. So James, can you talk a little bit about how J.D. Vance has used this false narrative to bring attention to that story?
Yeah, and Trump obviously has made immigration his signature issue going back the day he came down the golden escalator to announce his presidential campaign. He said, Mexico at that point is sending rapists and criminals and not their best. And a lot of his political appeal has been xenophobic in nature. And this encapsulates sort of his warning of otherness, of the country slipping away from the people who have traditionally lived here, all that kind of thing. J.D. Vance, in some ways, is less deft of a politician than Donald Trump is. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but so Vance ends up like twisting himself into pretzels. He's married to the daughter of immigrants. He goes on he goes on CNBC this week and he says, well, if immigration was so good, America would be the most prosperous country in the world. And it's sort of like, dude, like we are, like he's just not as good at it as like he's the demagoguery, because I think it is less natural for him.
I mean, he can't even order donuts.
Right, that's true. But I do think it gets at something bigger, which is that immigration is a strength for Trump. A lot of people are concerned. It's funny, just public opinion, when you look historically, like it tends to react to who's in charge and what the federal policies are. So like when Trump was president and family separation was happening and like Trump was doing a lot of awful things that were very inhumane, there was stronger support than ever in measured in polls for like being welcoming and bringing more people in. And now the polling really has changed, and there's not widespread support for mass deportation, which is what Trump is promising to do at the Republican convention. We remember people in the crowd waving signs that said mass deportation now. That doesn't have majority support, but neither, frankly, in 2016 did Build the Wall, which now actually does have majority support. And I remember so many Trump voters talking to them in 2016, and it's hard to remember now because it was so long ago, but you would say, like, do you really support building the wall? Do you think Trump's going to build the wall? And they'd say, no.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about the wall. The wall is the wall's a stand-in.
Yeah.
It's a symbol.
They meant figuratively.
Yeah, they meant like it. They did, and then it was like that. And when Trump rallies, people would be like, "Build the wall," and you'd be like, "Well, why do you want to build a wall?" Like, and so I think that it's like I think what's happening to Springfield, like what Trump has done, is awful, and I think that they're using Springfield as a cudgel. But there is an argument from a political strategy perspective that they've now spent. It's like the only thing you really remember from the debate, and it cuts both ways, which is like Trump is obviously like erratic and chaotic, and it's always just drama, and he makes stuff up. But it also is now a full week of like fundamentally talking about an issue that plays to Donald Trump's advantage.
And what does it do to Democrats, Rhonda, if this is the focus of like, this lie that Trump perpetuated about eating pets in Springfield, Ohio? Does it, I mean, what position does it put Democrats in terms of, do they lose ground if this is what we're talking about? Is it just wasted time for Democrats if the focus is on that and not on actual policies?
Yeah, I don't know if it's wasted time for them. I mean, a lot of Democrats are talking about how ridiculous this is, that it was a manufactured story. There is more and more proof that it is. I mean, the Wall Street Journal put out yesterday that part of Vance's team did try to do a fact check before he even said anything, and he went ahead and claimed this claim.
So they fact-checked it. It was not
They
true.
were told, no, this is not a true story
he still
here.
went with it.
And he went with it. So we're even like hearing more and more a week later that there was no evidence, and there still is no evidence. But I think what Democrats can obviously use this for is ammunition, saying this is silly, this is what you're getting from the other side. But it really, when you think about the voters in the middle, and folks I've talked to who are those people who are like, I don't know who to vote for, I don't know where I stand right now, they really want to hear about policy. And this was an opportunity to perhaps talk about some sort of policy plan related to immigration, because it is ranking high in how voters feel, but yet we're only talking about a story that has no credence and is just, kind of more salacious than it is anything with credence. So, I don't know what Democrats might plan to do with this, but it is allowing them to continue to say the other side is this silly party of chaos. We're the ones who have a plan. But have they put forward a plan? That's what they need to start saying.
You might say weird, right? I mean, the Republicans are acting weird with this.
I think there's some interesting nuance here too, because there are actual real issues, right? And so one of the things that
in Springfield,
in Springfield, and so I talked to several people and about this, and really it just comes, they told me that the issues that got kind of override with this like pet eating thing is that no, this is a small city that has had a huge influx of non-English speaking people. And I talked to a reverend, we could show the clip now. I talked to a reverend from Episcopal church there, and here's what she told me kind of just based on what they'd seen.
And let me just preface this by saying these Haitians are here legally.
Yes.
They have the legal right to work. It is an intentional thing, a decision that's been made to resettle them in Springfield, Ohio.
That's exactly. They did not sneak in. They actually they were here to work. Yeah.
Let's listen to the tape.
The questions of how do we grow the city? How do we provide affordable housing? How do we, tackle with some of the challenges in our school system right now where, for a number of years, I don't know how many, the entire city school system of Springfield qualifies for free lunches and I believe free breakfasts because the level of poverty in the public school system is that high. Those are some very real challenges, and those existed before the Haitians arrived. But the fact that they've existed before the Haitians arrived means that they're clearly much too complex for a soundbite. Whereas vilifying a group of people, that makes a really quick soundbite. And it makes them seem very foreign and very strange and very scary.
So, yeah, I mean, she kind of said it in a way that, and I saw it driving around. I mean, this is a city that clearly is a Rust Belt, what you would call Rust Belt city that had a lot of industry at one point that's gone. And, I saw a lot of empty houses that, at one point you looked these grand, large houses that now looked pretty run down in some areas of the city, empty storefronts. And she said it there that this is a city that struggled, that has a high poverty rate before the Haitian community arrived there. And, talking about those nuances, and then you add in, a huge subset of people and trying to incorporate them in your community. I saw signs for schools, needing to hire interpreters, needing to hire, language specialists. And that's what I had a couple of people tell me. And one guy actually, when I met her, I was actually driving through the city, just filming, kind of getting my feel. And I saw a huge line of cars for a food bank. And this was the people waiting in line, that they said it's the third largest in the state food bank. They do it once a month. And they get people just all day coming in. And one of the gentlemen who was volunteering there told me that he wasn't mad. He was angry about the situation. He was not mad at the Haitians.
Was this a white guy?
Yeah, the white guy there talking. He said he had voted for Trump both elections. He had no animosity, he said, towards the Haitians. He was just mad that this kind of happened to them and they've got no assistance.
That Springfield has gotten an influx.
Yeah, and no one was helping them. There was no federal funding going there. There was just they were sort of like he felt like they'd been just left on their own.
Well, this gets to the question of what are the solutions and why, like the initial call for help, I think, to offices, to congressional offices was like, we need better housing, we need more assistance, we need funding, not people are eating pets to, I can't say if anyone called about that falsely or not, but the call for help was genuinely about services. Rhonda, J.D. Vance was on CNN with Dana Bash on Sunday and basically admitted to amplifying stories just to get attention. Let's play it and you can hear it. Our audience can hear it in his own words.
The American media totally ignored this stuff until Donald Trump and I started talking about cat memes. If I have to,
but it wasn't just a meme,
create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do, Dana, because you guys are completely letting Kamala Harris coast.
You just said that this is a story that you
Yes.
created. So the eating dogs and cats thing is not.
We are
accurate.
creating. Dana, it comes from firsthand accounts from my constituents. I say that we're creating a story, meaning we're creating the American media focusing on it.
So a couple of items. As Rhonda said, the Wall Street Journal has researched and reported that J.D. Vance's office fact-checked this ahead of time, found it not to be credible, went with it anyway. There's a question of what he's amplifying and what he's trying to get attention to. So is Trump's team putting out any proposals or policies to help Springfield in any sort of substantive way?
It doesn't appear. And I being a person from Ohio, I still listen to some of the local NPR stations. And this morning I heard a story that Trump has said he's planning to go in the next 2 weeks. I do not know what type of welcome he might get in Springfield at this point, or even if he's just saying that and then will choose not to go. But we have not heard any plan to help Springfield or other communities, because this story does happen in other communities. And it's not just the now. You can look back into history where you've had immigrants from other countries decide to establish somewhere. And, they often tell people back home, this is a great place for jobs, affordable housing, and more people come. So this is not a new story to America, but we have not heard anything from Republicans or Trump about a specific plan to help communities that are feeling overwhelmed. I'll also point out that Springfield wanted more people to come to help energize the economy. They did, I think it was back in 2014, did a Welcome to Springfield campaign to try to get more immigrants.
They had their...
So this isn't, the government didn't just send a plane to Haiti and fly everybody to Springfield.
Right. It was a population that was falling. The census was falling, and this is what their first kind of uptick they've had in decades, really. And they weren't just throwing darts at a map, being like, all right, let's send them over there.
Exactly. And I think one of the human storylines in all of this is that more and more you're hearing people in Springfield seem very unified. Yeah. And it's interesting because if you look at election data, I went back a few elections, Clark County, where Springfield is located, is pretty red. I mean, there's usually no question where that county will go when it comes to elections. And Trump won handedly there in the last two elections. I'm very interested. I'm actually writing in my election night notes to find out what Clark County's election data says this time around, because I'm wondering if this has an effect. Because yes, they supported Trump. Yes, there are probably many Trump supporters there. I don't know if you met any, but I feel like these people are struggling with something that was put upon them that they have rejected over and over and over again. These are the type of people who do not want a spotlight. They want to just go ahead and live their life, take their kids to school. And now they have this from a person that they voted for previously. I'm really interested to look at the margins on election night.
I had people tell me very specifically, and I was actually at a grocery store talking to some Haitian immigrants who were walking in, and there was a gentleman in a Trump shirt walked by, and I thought I got to talk to this guy as he's walking out. He didn't want to go on camera or anything like that or give his name, but he talked to me about how, he grew up in Springfield. He's lived here all his life. He had kind of more again, like a very nuanced look that he thought that he actually was the immigrants here, for the most part, he thought had been beneficial to the economy, to Springfield. He sort of echoed some of the frustrations I heard that it's hard with the language barriers and some of the driving accidents and things like that, but that he wasn't angry at them or didn't think they were bad people or anything like that. He was still very much a Trump supporter. He thought that these words, that the things that had happened at least brought some light into the struggles of the community. But at the same time, I had a lot of people tell me they didn't want Trump. They don't want, I think there was a report that Vivek Ramaswamy was going to go there too. They just wanted kind of this to go away again and stop having the city become part of the spotlight.
What did you see in terms of like yard signs supporting Trump or Harris?
Right.
Or
So I also, as I was driving around, I always keep an eye on that stuff as well. And I would say that it was actually sort of shocking to see not that many Trump signs out, especially like in that part of the country, like you said.
did you see Harris signs?
Yeah, I did. I saw a lot of Harris wall signs and, probably like equal number. I mean, not even that many in general. That I would feel like you would normally see. I mean, we're only like a month away from the election.
It's like a month and a half, 2 months, 50 days.
I never knew. I lost track of time at this point. But yeah, I mean, not as many as you would think. I don't know if they like people took them down or like, what happened in the last 2 weeks. But it was not as many as you would think. And it was definitely split way more evenly than you would think.
Did you see any Senate race signs of that? I mean, one of the things when you're watching on election night, because it is one of the competitive Senate races.
Yes.
Sherrod Brown, Democrat up for re-election. Bernie Moreno. A lot of these issues, the undercurrent might actually have more of an effect.
I
on the
saw
Senate
some
race than
Brown
presidential.
signs. Normally, mostly in yards that had Harris signs. I did not see one Moreno sign.
Interesting.
Yeah, I saw. I mean, even on the few houses that did have a Trump or Vance placard, I didn't see anything. Yeah.
James, the Washington Post has a new poll out looking at Pennsylvania, a key state right next to Ohio. What does it tell us about immigration and how immigration is playing?
Well, so immigration is one of Trump's biggest strengths. And our poll basically showed a statistical dead heat, no matter how you splice it. And it's interesting. In Pennsylvania, independents are split. In the overall race among likely voters, it's 48-47 Harris. Obviously, that's within the margin of error. Trump is seen as better able to handle immigration by a 52% to 39% margin. We tried to get at the nuance of people's views. So one of the questions said, what do you think we should do with the people who are in this country illegally? And the mass deportation idea that Trump is pitching was one of the options. It did not get 50%. It got about the same amount of support as people who said there should be a path to legal status, path to citizenship. That I should say correlates very strongly with Democratic voters. And then there are a lot of people in the middle who are sort of like feel like there's been too much undocumented immigration. They want the border to be secure, but they don't really care deeply. They don't want to. I think the third option was like deport people who have committed crimes or are violent, but there's not widespread clamoring, and this is one of those things where the pendulum swings. If Trump wins and actually does try to like start removing millions of people from the country, I mean that would be economically devastating. But I think the political backlash would be really severe if you think about the effect it would have on communities where all of a sudden, people. Your kid's friend at school is sent away. Your housekeeper is sent away. That kind of thing. Your husband is sent away.
Right.
And there would be horror stories. So I think it's one of those things where it's very hard to imagine, even though Trump says he's serious. When you say like, what is Trump's
the wall
plan?
was
Like,
hard to imagine.
Exactly.
Back in 2016.
And now it has
it's very
majority
popular.
support. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to talk about how Kamala Harris is responding to this, because we were talking earlier about like what do Democrats do in this moment? And Rhonda points out they can shed light on like, look how weird they are. But I do wonder if it's like a treading water moment, because the conversation does lead sometimes to immigration. It's not a big winner for Kamala Harris. How can she reclaim or put some footprint on like, here's what I want to do on immigration? How can she get some traction in here about what she actually wants to do on immigration? But let's listen to how she talked about this before the National Association of Black Journalists. You'll recall that Trump sat down with them over the summer, made kind of bonkers headlines when he was questioning Kamala Harris's racial identity. My eyes could not be getting bigger right now. And so Kamala Harris had a much more sort of measured, normal conversation, got asked a lot of tough questions. And they asked her specifically about how the issue of the fake pet eating thing was being talked about. So that's what she responded to.
I know that people are deeply troubled by what is happening to that community in Springfield, Ohio. And it's got to stop. And we've got to say that you cannot be entrusted with standing behind the seal of the President of the United States of America, engaging in that hateful, rhetoric that, as usual, is designed to divide us as a country, is designed to have people pointing fingers at each other. It's designed to do that. And I think most people in our country, regardless of their race, are starting to see through this nonsense and to say, you know what, let's turn the page on this. This is exhausting and it's harmful.
Kamala Harris, in an interview with the National Association of Black Journalists, she's with a panel of journalists on stage. You know, I've only listened to that clip before this. I listened to the interview. I didn't watch it, and I'm glad to watch it right now. And a reminder that you can watch our show on YouTube. Just look for Washington Post, because her face says a lot. I mean, she's really feeling the words that she's saying and what she's talking about, and she's very expressive. And one thing that struck me is that she's not just saying, oh, it's weird, or she's not just saying, oh, talk to those guys. She's actually trying to get to the motive, which is important, because it's not just ignore the crazy. It's why are they talking about this? What are they trying to achieve, Rhonda?
And saying that it's just scary. That's something that she tried to bring home in that moment, is that this is dangerous, it's scary. And that will work with, you know, a lot of voters who are very concerned about the tone in the country right now. A lot of people who voted for Trump. I've talked to Republicans who have said, you know, I think I'll vote for him, but I just don't like the tone that he brings across. And they've been saying that for the last few elections that he's been part of. So everybody's always been kind of concerned about this tone. I also thought it was interesting, too, in that interview. I don't know if you guys caught it, but she does this thing, and again, it might be the prosecutor background, where she tries to string together an MO. So she even went back to the birther movement, and she said, this is something that he's done before. Remember when he questioned former President Obama's citizenship and created this birther movement? She's trying to string together a through line of the way Trump has always talked about immigration and presenting it to people in a way that says, do you want this or do you want something different? And people can understand that. And she keeps saying the turn the page thing as well. So that can work on a human level. But I think what her campaign probably needs to do more, given some of the breakdown that James gave us about immigration, is talk about it a lot more with some specifics, because American people can handle specifics. They want it. They want policy. And they're not hearing a lot about it in this cycle.
They say they want.
I was going to say, you're more optimistic.
No, I mean, from what I have heard from voters I've interviewed, there is a complaint that this has been just this election cycle where whatever the news, the salacious news of the day, is what people are talking about, and no one really has any answers on these candidates. So.
I mean, but the chaos, right? This is again, just like, dude, like I felt very much like that when I got going back to when we were talking about getting the call and going out. It just felt like, oh, we're in the Trump chaos storm again, where everything, you know, and I don't know.
We're all reacting.
Yeah, just kind of, and I don't know, at some point our voters, you know, not obviously his base, but people on the fence, like, do I want it 4 more years of just that kind of chaotic, you know?
And right now, those are the people that you need to win, both sides. So,
or are you just reminding them about immigration and how concerned they are about immigration, which gets them back to the question of who do they believe more can make a difference in immigration? So it's we'll see where it goes. Yeah. Hey, Jorge, thank you so much.
Thanks
Just
so
wait by that phone for the next call about where we're sending
bags
next.
will be packed.
That's right. Thank you to Jorge's family. All right. Well, everybody else stay with us. We're going to talk about the Teamsters and how they have chosen on the national level not to endorse a presidential candidate, first time in a couple of decades, but local Teamster organizations are endorsing. So we'll talk about what that means and why, and we'll dig more into that Washington Post poll that shows Trump and Harris in a dead heat in Pennsylvania. Stay with us. This is Sidebar from the Washington Post. So a handful of states are beginning the early voting process, which is pretty remarkable. And we'll see military ballots go out, overseas ballots go out, and people being able to start the process of mailing ballots, absentee voting, depending on what state you live in and where. And we'll talk more in future weeks about how states are running their elections. But it is incredible to think that it is go time now. We just saw a big moment to those of us who watch endorsements and watch to sort of get a sense of how leadership of major organizations is going, in that the Teamsters elected not to endorse on the national level a presidential candidate. Rhonda, how momentous is this?
You ask that.
Is it not momentous at all?
Question mark.
Yeah. Is it? Well, maybe it's not. I mean, do people vote by the way their union tells them or not?
I think we're still trying to figure that out. In fact, I have been looking at a graphic that the Teamsters put out with their membership polling results, their straw poll, their phone polling. And it is quite interesting because the Teamsters were pretty much behind Biden significantly just a few months ago. And now we're seeing that they are more in favor of Trump.
So let's look at this. This is like a town hall straw poll. Once again, the Teamsters has put this out themselves. The Washington Post, did not conduct this.
Correct.
We don't know the methodology.
Right. Totally. But it shows, for those of us who are listening to us, the town hall straw poll shows Biden 44%, Trump 36%, and then RFK at like over 5.5%. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. This is an electronic member poll, and here's where things get really interesting. Trump has the lead by nearly 60%. Harris at 34%, other candidates 6.4%. And then finally, we have one more slide that shows a research telephone poll that the Teamsters say they conducted. Trump, 58% of support. Harris, 31% of support. Undecided, 6%. Don't know, 5%. Now, important to note that Teamster members themselves have complained about the lack of transparency and the methodology of this. We have no idea how this was done. That is of concern. With all that being said, Rhonda.
Yeah. And it gave Trump an ability to say that he won, even though they did not have any endorsement for either candidate. He did say yesterday that he basically got the endorsement because of these numbers. But again, I will say it a third time. You both said it, but this is not a post poll. It was beautiful graphics, but it was not a post poll, and we can't vouch for the methodology. But I will say that this does give us a little bit of a glimpse, I think. I don't think it's changing anything about the race. But a non-endorsement, I'm wondering what that means for Harris when it comes to working class folks. You know, she spent a lot of time the last few weeks talking about the middle class and making sure that the middle class has the resources they need for, housing affordability, growing their families. But working class and middle class folks probably don't see each other as the same. And a lot of union members and Teamsters, you got to think about it, they are like 1 million people big. They cover so many industries, so many sectors. This is a pretty big sample of people. So for the working class people to feel like, maybe they need to know Harris a little bit more, maybe she needs to tell them more about what she will do for them. I think that this non-endorsement may give us and these poll numbers may give us a little bit of a window into just the thinking across America when it comes to working class issues.
So I think that last poll probably is a reflection of where the Teamsters rank and file is. The poll, I don't know the methodology, we didn't conduct it, but it was conducted by Lake Research Partners, which is owned and run by Celinda Lake, who ironically is now one of Kamala Harris's pollsters. It's the unions have Democratic firms working for them. So if Kamala Harris's pollster is saying that 58% of...
So when you say the poll, you mean which one?
The third one.
The third one. So can we show that one up again? Because there was the straw poll.
Right.
There was the...
So the second one, the one that showed Trump really far ahead, apparently that was there was an ad in the Union magazine, the electronic member poll. So that's the second one, the one that shows Trump like nearly 60%. Apparently that was an ad in the Teamsters monthly magazine. And that's why you can see it says it was conducted from July through mid-September. But this research phone poll, you can see on the bottom right.
Let me just read it again. Trump, 58%, Harris, 31%.
It says independently conducted by Lake Research Partners, which is Celinda Lake, who's a Harris-Biden pollster.
I'm so glad you read the fine print. It literally reads the fine print.
And this was also completed after the RNC and the DNC and the presidential debate. And I think this seems legit. And I think ultimately Sean O'Brien, the head of the Teamsters, is trying to follow his members. He got elected in 2022, promising to be more reflective of the members. And you're right, Rhonda, it's actually 1.3 million members. It's a huge union. It's one of the 10 biggest. it's truck drivers, rail workers, freight haulers. It is blue collar, overwhelmingly majority male, overwhelmingly non-college educated. And so when you actually look at the 58-31 and compare it to like that demographic in the rest of the electorate, it actually is surprising Harris is doing as well as she is. The Washington Post poll in Pennsylvania we've been talking about, it shows men in Pennsylvania support Trump by 9 points. Women favor Harris by 10 points. Trump leads by 26 points among white voters without four-year college degrees. And Harris is up 11 points among white college graduates. Our Post poll actually asked if you're a union member or part of a union household. Harris leads Trump by 12 points among voters in union households in Pennsylvania and 11 points among union members themselves. But that includes some of the more, traditionally Democratic unions, SEIU, service workers, that kind of thing. I mean, the Teamsters have a really interesting history. In 1996, they did not endorse Bill Clinton. They chose to stay neutral, and they actually did endorse I believe George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan. And so there is a history.
But since that was a long time ago, but they've endorsed Obama, they've endorsed Biden, they endorsed Hillary Clinton.
And there's a couple. I mean,
that's why it's one of the reasons why it's making news is because they've been on a streak of endorsing Democrats for the last election cycles, and so this by not endorsing either, that was a departure.
Right. And so in Harris, obviously the Teamsters have sort of been dangling this endorsement. They've been trying to get concessions. They've been trying to get people. And Trump, I think, wants to rebrand himself as this like pro-worker guy. And J.D. Vance has tried to say, the Republicans should be the blue collar party. So Trump invited the head of the Teamsters not just to give a big speech, the keynote at the RNC, but also to come to Mar-a-Lago. And he really has courted him. Kamala Harris met earlier this week with the Teamsters Executive Committee here in Washington. And in the room, she actually said, look, I know a lot of your rank and file members, pulling back to our first conversation, are worried about my position on immigration. She brought it up. They didn't bring it up. And she said, you should tell them I've supported this bipartisan border deal that would send them more border agents. And so she proactively brought it up, which I think is really interesting. And there's a Democrats I've talked to, including very senior Democrats, incredibly frustrated. Understandably, the Biden people actually publicly took a shot at the Teamsters union leadership after this non-endorsement. But so during the meeting with Harris, there was this roundtable, and they pushed her really hard about the role that President Biden played in averting a rail strike in late 2022. And also they complained that the White House didn't do more to help the Teamsters when they were clashing with UPS. Over a contract last summer. But the Democratic view is Biden bailed out their pensions. Kamala Harris cast the tie vote. But in every major piece of legislation they passed, there have been tons of union requirements and all this stuff. And so there is a sense among the Harris team that like,
what else do you want from us?
Exactly. There's a lack of gratitude. And it's sort of like you're nitpicking these two things when Trump put all these anti-union people at the National Labor Relations Board. And like Trump, it says he's pro-worker, but he has this long history. Kamala Harris is talking about signing the PRO Act, which is the top organized labor priority. Trump wouldn't even commit during his meeting with the Teamsters to veto national right to work legislation that would allow people to opt out of joining unions. So there's a lot of frustration among the Harris team, but I do think this is like a really significant moment in the campaign. And if Harris ends up losing, like this is part of the explanation. It's part of the story that that the Democratic coalition, which has really existed since FDR, where it's like organized labor is one of the foundational pillars of the Democratic coalition. If it's wobbly and Democrats narrowly lose as a result, it says something about are changing politics.
Yeah. So the AFL-CIO is supporting Harris. Other major union organizations are supporting Harris. Yes. Branches of the Teamsters in states are supporting Harris. So to your point, James, if Trump wins, it's not like the members are going to follow exactly what the national Teamsters are telling them, but it's a flag in the wind to give us a sense of where the wind is blowing and how these white working class voters are feeling about the Democratic nominee and about Donald Trump. I want to play some tape just to give a sense of the sort of the dueling realities here. Sean O'Brien, the head of the Teamsters, spoke at the RNC. It was a big deal, and he made it a big deal. And he basically said, "I'm going to go talk to the Democrats as well," but they elected not to invite him to their convention. Let's hear what he had to say about Donald Trump, though, because I think this gets not into just the policy. It gets into like the vibe.
Yeah. President Trump is a candidate who is not afraid of hearing from new, loud, and often critical voices. And I think we all can agree, whether people like him or they don't like him, in light of what happened to him on Saturday, he has proven to be one tough SOB.
That's Sean O'Brien at the Republican convention talking about, of course, the aftermath of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump that happened the Saturday before the convention began. I mean, that's a vibe, right? He's talking about things that he wants to be himself: tough, loud, contrarian, and someone who can take it. And that is a gut feeling, right? It's not about the laws that Trump would pass, the laws that Harris would pass. And you can see why the Harris campaign is frustrated, because they have had a very pro-union agenda, and it's like they're not getting credit for it.
And I should say, Republicans frustrated too. The Republican Party has traditionally been a pro-business party in its policies. And at that Republican convention, there were so many important, like, big donors, aides to Senate Republican leadership, and they were like, "What the heck is this guy?" The Teamsters over the last 10 years have spent 99.5% of their political money on helping elect Democrats, and so there was frustration too among kind of the Chamber of Commerce type Republicans. You're inviting this, basically union Democrat in, and you're not giving all these business leaders a chance. It shows that we could be seeing this realignment. If Trump becomes president again and decides to actually impose his 10% tariffs and somehow, becomes actually pro-union in a weird, unpredictable way, you could actually see the parties sort of shift a little bit, and the Democrats are becoming more of the party of the college educated and the professional elite and the suburbs, and maybe some of the other kind of blue collar unions start to gravitate more. I mean, it seems unlikely, but everything always seems unlikely until it happens, and then it seems like it was always inevitable.
Yeah, and I'm also wondering too, if Trump had any sort of pro-union policies if he were to be elected, when he said those things and had O'Brien there at the RNC, that did feel like, oh, okay, the Republican Party is tapping into a part of, the traditional Democratic base. But I'm also wondering if it's just, obviously a play to get votes, or is it a true conviction? Because he also said, if you guys remember with Elon Musk, Trump did say that people who are in unions and strike should be fired. So which one is it? Right. I don't know. But it certainly, to your point about realignment, it really, if we weren't so busy in this election cycle, this is a very fascinating cycle just on a historic level, because the parties are all over the place right now. We've seen that in what we're just talking about with this poll, the non-endorsement, nothing is conventional anymore. So I'm
really glad you said the Elon Musk thing, because I do think
we forget about
Trump's,
these little things.
Trump's a business guy who's a developer. He's never been, he's not pursued policies or been favorable to unions.
When he talked about the membership Teamster support for him, he was like, "Those guys did the work on my big buildings." I'm totally paraphrasing, but he was like, "Yeah, they did. They did things. It's not about policy. It's about they build my buildings, which is not about what he would actually do for them. It's about what they have done for him." I want to give the flip side of this coin of what the Democrats chose to do instead of having Sean O'Brien do a double appearance. And you can see why he would go to the RNC. It's an opportunity for him. It's an opportunity to make inroads, potentially, with Republicans. Let's listen to what Democrats did at their convention instead by trying to get members of unions, and the Teamsters included, there to be a presence on the foot soldier level.
The Biden-Harris administration passed the American Rescue Plan, including the Butch-Lewis Act, to save our pensions and secure our retirement. They got it done without one single Republican vote in Congress.
That's Kenneth Stribling, president of the National Committee to Protect Pensions. And he was on stage there with a lot of other union members who were there to talk about the specific policies.
Yeah.
So that's the tact they're taking. And we'll see how this all rolls in to the election. And you guys have just made such important points about how a lot of this will be revealed in terms of the analysis that we make after we see how people actually choose to vote. Do you think what your union leadership tells you matters to voters? Do we know?
Well, it is ultimately, it has some marginal impact, and I think it in a really close race, it could matter. And as you noted, Libby, it's the locals in Michigan and Wisconsin from the Teamsters have endorsed Harris. The actual Nevada, the Council of the West that includes 300,000 of the members officially endorsed Harris. A lot of it is about spending money and the Teamsters at their offices. It's like having paraphernalia or, paying for door knockers. And I think that stuff sort of helps. I think that, Sean O'Brien thinks we should all rally behind Harris because it doesn't in this case, but it would, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just another part of this election cycle where, again, we can't use these moments to figure out what's going to happen in the end. Everything is so unconventional at this point. I don't know if an endorsement or non-endorsement helps or hurts either candidate at this point. I don't think it's going to move a needle in that way. But I do know that the presence of unions matter. It seems to matter more these days. Think about the Hollywood strike a few years ago, or maybe that was last year, actually, and how big that was. And that led into, strikers in the hotel industry and casino workers in Nevada. Important places where these votes are definitely going to matter on election night. I don't know if it has a huge effect, but it could have a very granular effect in communities if people feel like the union is not backing a candidate.
To the point of a lot of this will make sense in retrospect as we look back and reflect. Let's talk about finally one of the hallmarks of this campaign have been the debates, the one that ultimately led to Joe Biden choosing to step out of the race. And then last week's debate, as we look at this Pennsylvania poll from the Washington Post, more than 8 in 10 registered voters in Pennsylvania reported watching at least some of last week's presidential debate, including similar majorities of Democrats, Republicans, and independents. And among those debate watchers, twice as many said Harris won than Trump won. Another 17% said neither won. Despite that, and with that information, Pennsylvania is a statistical heat, James.
It's amazing. That's an overwhelming sense that she won the debate, and it's still tied. Trump's disapproval is really high. Trump is viewed unfavorably by 52% of people in this poll, and very unfavorably by 49% of Pennsylvania voters, and yet it's tied. And so, it's amazing now. Post Biden, Democrats are animated and activated again. So both sides are running at 93% support among their party, and the independents.
Wait, that is incredible.
It's amazing.
So interest and motivation is extraordinarily high
on both sides. And one of the reasons Trump was able to win, we talk about, Biden won Pennsylvania, Biden's from Scranton. Biden won Pennsylvania by 1 point. Trump won Pennsylvania in 2016 by less than 1 point. And it seems almost certain that we're going to have an outcome within 1-ish points, either way.
Yes.
And it really is, you think about the next 7 weeks, what's going to change the fundamental dynamic of the race? We're going to have a VP debate, which will be fascinating. We're not going to have another presidential debate. There will always be an October surprise. Stuff will happen, but it feels like at this point, the race is tied, and it's really just a test of, you mentioned early voting. In-person early voting starts in Virginia on Friday. Now it's just which side can get more of their people out. And that's why the Teamsters not putting their muscle, the organizing muscle behind trying to get voters out for Democrats, maybe does matter if it's really tied in Pennsylvania. And if Harris can't win Pennsylvania, it is very hard for her to win the election. It does feel like Pennsylvania is the ball game. There is a path. You could win, I think, if you won Michigan and Wisconsin and Georgia, then I think you would also have to win either North Carolina or Arizona. And there's a way to do it, but it feels like this election's coming down to
The
Pennsylvania.
Keystone State is
Key.
Well, Rhonda and James, thank you so much. We'll continue to meet like this and keep talking about the election. Next week, we'll dive into Tim Walz, J.D. Vance, talk more about them, talk about what we know about their debate styles, their approaches to combating verbally as they get ready to spar on October 1st. And we'll just look at how voters are taking the two of them and what they're doing to the ticket. So definitely tune into Sidebar next week. A reminder, you can listen to us on your favorite podcast app and watch us on YouTube. For James, Rhonda, and Jorge, I'm Libby Casey. See you next week.